Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I'm actually doing a viewer request today. Viewer has a Karmann number 41, and I remembered that I had this one in the shop. I've never done anything with it, so this will kind of be a play along. He says that he doesn't know how to take it apart. Well, I don't either, but we're going to jump in there and see if I can't show him how to take it apart. And I don't know anything on the real history, so all I know is it says it was made in Japan. The style of the body kind of looks like 1960, maybe 1970s kind of a styling, metal bodies. And let's get started, because I'm interested to learn just as much as they are. I think what I like to do when I don't know a reel is flick the anti-reverse override off. That way, if I take the reel off, the side plate off, nothing interferes with the removal of the piece. If I left it on, if there's a dog there, sometimes that dog will pop out if there's a spring mechanism or so on. So let's get started. And while we get started, I want to just do what I've been doing lately. Thank our first responders, essential personnel, essential employees in government and private industry. For those of you that are trying to keep us safe during this pandemic, thank you for what you do every day, trying to keep some semblance of normalcy and also to keep us safe, whether that's law enforcement or education or general distribution, EMTs, healthcare, nursing home assists, long-term care facilities, and so on. Thank you. We just saw a story, I guess this morning, where we've had the highest infection rate yet in our country. So please, thank you for all you do. Stay safe. There was 3 screws. I took the handle out, took the 3 screws off the side plate. We turned the anti-reverse dog to the override that is off, and now we can remove the piece. Wow, got a big main gear in there, and we got a pretty solid side plate with a very simple cam that's working this anti-reverse override. And yes, there is a spring on here, so be careful as you're working it. I'm not going to take that spring off, but there is a spring that is performing some tension on there. It looks like it wraps around the stud here. That stud looks like it's held in by a screw, but there is definitely a spring there. Yeah, we have a screw underneath. So that's why I like to put it into the neutral position as I go about doing it. We're going to clean it. This looks like a pretty straightforward design. I got a main gear with a stud on it that's going to drive the crosswind block. I have a crosswind block here. It looks like we're just all kind of gummy. Crosswind block is held in with a screw on the axle shaft. The axle shaft holding the spool up top. So I'm going to just take some penetrating oil. I'm just going to get started on letting that sit there and maybe loosen up some of the grease while I take off the parts. And this one came from a viewer, Dean. He says he has one and doesn't know how to service it. Well, for Dean and for everybody else's benefit that may have one and want to service it, this will show you how to do that. And for those of us that are just kind of interested in real design and manufacture, we'll see how this one is made as well. There's a screw that goes into the axle shaft. I'm going to take that and put that screw into my parts tray where those other screws are. And that screw kind of looks very similar to the side plate screws, but note that one has a flat blade where the others are Phillips head. A parts tray is invaluable. I recommend you use one. As you notice this, pay attention to orientation. If it helps you, and I always recommend it, take pictures of your assemblies. That way you get it right on reinstall. For example, this one looks kind of like a football shape. The screw is on the bottom of this mechanism. It'd be real easy, I think, to flip this one over and put the screw on top, and then of course when you go to reinstall, it wouldn't work properly. I'm going to hold that crosswind block and should be able to just pull the shaft out, which I can do. I'm going to just take this off, or I probably could have done that earlier, but take the drag knob off because we're going to reassemble anyway. Well, isn't that interesting? I don't know the history of Karmann, but this one is using an Orvis 100 spool. I don't know if you can kind of see it on the camera there. So maybe this is an Orvis reel made in Japan. I'm not sure. If anybody knows the history of this one, please let me know. Okay, once I take that off, I should be able to remove the rotor. We're going to do that for cleaning. I'm going to use my Mitchell tool. It's a 12 millimeter screw, or pinion is the screw, this is the nut. Put that in my parts tray and pull the rotor up, and we should probably be able to push this down to remove the pinion gear. Kind of slide in place, and now we can clean the assembly. There is no ball bearing, or no ball bearings. There's no ball bearing in this assembly. So let's just do the same thing here. I'm just going to kind of squirt this with the penetrating oil just to let it loosen. I'll go back to the other pieces now. So if it's an Orvis reel, it's kind of interesting. A lot of the Orvis reels were made in Italy early on. This one says it's made in Japan. I don't know if it's an Orvis reel or they're just using the Orvis spool. That would kind of be unusual. But nothing really surprises me inside of reels. I've taken Okuma reels apart thinking that there was an Okuma reel, and I found out that the inside of it was a Shakespeare reel. So there are, I'm sure, examples out there where there's just contract manufacturers and they can use some interchangeable parts, but I would suspect this has some link to Orvis if it's not an Orvis reel, although it doesn't say Orvis on the outside. All right, well, so you saw me scraping a little bit using the penetrating oil as a general degreaser. And we've got that side nice and clean now. So we can turn our attention to the next piece that was kind of soaking over there, which is the main gear. I don't want to lose that little shim washer that belongs on the main gear, but we're going to do the same thing again. Just kind of get that old and dried grease. That would be why this reel wasn't performing very well. Get that all off. One more time with that to get the face of this done. And I think we're probably going to start spreading bad grease if we leave it like that. One more thing I want to do on this then, I want to grab a hard brush, whether it's a wire brush or a bristle brush, or in this case it's a brass brush, and I just want to pull it through the teeth here to get the old grease that's in those teeth out of there. And then we'll check the teeth, make sure that they're all uniform, no cracks, no dents, no chips, no wear. Not much I could do with this reel if there was. The more modern reels, if you can still get a replacement main gear, sometimes you need to do that because the gear is warped or you've got broken teeth, which certainly dull the performance. Okay, we should be in pretty good shape with that. Check those teeth now. They seem fine. They seem uniform. So we should be able to go pretty well. Okay, I'll put that in my tray. We'll turn our attention to the body, which has been soaking in that penetrating oil. Get the hard grease that's off of there. And this is typical of what happens in older reels that lay around for a while. I don't know how long this one was laying around. I happen to have been in Fort Lauderdale, of all places, and there's a flea market out there. I think it's called Sunrise or Sunset or something kind of flea market out there. It's a pretty huge market. I didn't go there for the market, but I was there and passed it and said, gee, why don't I just kind of jump in? And I was kind of surprised if there was a few reels there that I was able to purchase and bring back. I thought it would be an ideal place for fishing reels since it's on the coast. But yeah, so this has a model number on it, but no more indication that it is or is not made by or for Orvis. Again, if anybody knows the history of this one, please let me know. I know some, and I try to research others. I don't know this one. Okay, we have nice brass bushing up top there. One more piece then, it's just a crosswind gear. It's got a lot of old dry grease in that as well, but it is cleaning up nicely. And there's not much to service on this one, Dean, so don't be shy. Jump in there, and you should be fine in terms of just doing what we're doing here, cleaning it up, relubing it, and it should work good. And we just have a little bit left in that channel there, so get the old grease out of that channel. Again, I use a series of scraping tools like screwdrivers and the like. I use cotton swabs, and obviously I use paper towels to collect a lot of that old grease. Okay, I think we're good there. There's not a good finish on this one. It's all been worn out over time. That's fine. I like to think that it's a symbol of use, and that's what these things should be. They should be used. Do the same thing here on this pinion gear. Clean that up, check the teeth, and we can just begin to reinstall them. I'm going to grab the brush. Make sure we get a good dose of grease onto that. I'm going to check that washer, because that washer may have come off of this, not the other. Nope, too small. It had to come off the main gear. I was just thinking, usually I see a washer on the case where where it intersects with that bushing. In this case, I don't. I noticed when I took this out that it really has to sit all the way in that case in order to get it in. You don't have a lot of room to make that work. And when you grease it up, it's sort of like not real easy to work in. There you go. All right, so turns nicely. One more piece we'll do before we move much further. We'll do the same thing here. This is kind of like rinse and repeat. We're going to flood that with our penetrating oil to use as a degreaser. We're going to try and wipe out all the old dirt that's in there. And you'll notice I have a protective glove on my one hand here. That's to keep most of the chemicals and dry grease and who knows what's in there off my hand. I tried that on my dominant hand, and when I work with it, I have too much trouble holding small pieces and parts and tools and the like, so I don't do that. If I could figure out how to do that, I certainly would, but right now I settle for half is better than none. And it seems like this hand is always holding the dirty pieces and parts anyway. I'm going to just check that bale operation. Fires nicely. We're going to oil that bale. In this case, I'm going to just grab my pen oil because it's close by. This is a dead end. There's nothing going on there. There's a spring assembly here. The firing mechanism is below. So make sure you get some oil on there and then work it in. Make sure that it has a nice flip to it. Okay, we'll just go ahead and put the bale back on then. Going to grab that rotor nut. I said bale, the bale assembly, which is the rotor. Go ahead and tighten that up. Grab this tool. Now, you don't need the Mitchell tool. This isn't even a Mitchell reel. But if you have a 12 millimeter socket, that's all you really need. We'll give it a spin, and it's spinning as you would expect for a bushing. So we're good there. All right, now we can take our axle shaft again. Gonna get a light coat of grease onto the axle shaft. And when we go to install the axle shaft, you're going to need the crosswind block. Remember, the hole is on the downside of the crosswind block. And I think we can probably start by just laying it in that cavity there, putting the axle shaft through, and then aligning for the hole. Just like that. And I have a pick that you can hold to make sure that that hole is aligned. And then it's that flat-headed or flat slotted screw that goes inside the case here. I'll tighten that down. and that'll embed itself in there nicely. And then I'm looking at this, and it probably says I could have put the grease on the back end of that, but I can also put it on the shoulders where it's going to ride, so we'll do that. Get it on the shoulders, move it up, get it on the bottom of the shoulders here, and that'll keep the back end of that crosswind block running nicely. And then we'll also make sure that we get a good amount of grease into that and around that slot, which is going to ride on the main gear. Okay, we've cleaned this. Let's put a drop of oil onto that mechanism that's the dog. Again, this is in the off position. I'm not going to change that. I'm going to find my gear. We're going to put some grease onto the shaft of this. I've already put that small washer that popped off. I put that back on. Grab the front end of this. The face gets greased because that's where it's going to ride inside the crosswind block. And then the teeth get grease as well. Now you don't have to get grease in every channel. It'll only kind of push its way out. And it will spread with the interaction with the pinion gear. So just get a good amount of grease on it. We can slide that in to the case. We can put that handle back on. Now that handle is a little tight coming out, so I'm just going to put a little bit of penetrating oil on there, followed by some regular oil just to keep it a little bit loose so it doesn't seize up. I'll come back in here and screw that handle on just to hold the main gear. Now I took the handle off before, so you don't need to put the handle back on in order to reinstall, but I just like that it holds that main gear from flopping around as I do the assembly. So there we go. We can give it a test, make sure that it's working smooth. Boy, that's like Oppo. You follow that little stud around and your eye kind of gets pulled into it. All right, so now we want to just match the stud with the slot, kind of do that visually before you locate your case. And we'll put the 3 screws in, then we'll come back and we'll do a quick test before I tighten down very much. Let's just get it holding. So I am not an expert at all. I guess advanced hobbyist would be a good description of what I do. But I don't know the Orvis reels, and if anybody can lend any information on that, I would certainly welcome that knowledge. Please leave it in the comment section for everybody to appreciate. Right now we're just tying down the 3 side plate screws. We'll do a quick test, make sure it's all working nicely. And we'll see what we can do from there. Okay, they're all tight. Let's give it a spin. Wow, that really lightened up. And the reverse works. So here's what I mean by that not knowing. This is an Orvis 100 spool. At least that's what it says on there. And I don't know. It looks like the drag washers on this one are pressed in. I can't make a determination, but it looks like this metal ring has been folded over. I don't know how to get this piece out to service the drag washer, if it's even serviceable. And I'm certainly not going to try prying back a metal ring if that's what the answer is. So if somebody knows the answer to that, please let me and our viewers know. It'll go a long way. We have a washer down here, or a spacer. It may just simply be that this is your drag washer, and the rest is just a series of metals to work the tension within it. And this may be your washer, but it could also be your spacer. Okay. So let's just put that spool back on. There's a little bit of dirt here. I'm just going to clean that off. Clean the bottom of the spool off in case that's what that is. You'll see we have a little click tongue here. That's when your spool is running backwards. It's going to intersect with your click rotor. And then I think we owe it to ourselves to at least give this a little clean on the drag button. I can't even remember what I paid for this reel. I do know that I got a couple of reels that day, and I do know that a lot of them were in need of repair, and I think this came with a few, so I couldn't even begin to tell you what I purchased this for at the time. But I do know that I thought it unusual. I never saw a Karmann, and it was in the box with the other things, so I thought, if nothing else, it'll be a torsion reel. All right, let's hold that down. Yeah, drag is working fine. It's holding tight. So again, give that a test with the full blown on there. Make sure the bail is working. There you go. So Dean, that's your Karmann number 41 and how to service this reel. I'm glad I found it when I was kind of snooping around my shop after you had made that request. And now we know a little bit more about what that reel is. And we also have some questions about what that reel is, given that Orvis spool. So again, thank you for watching this. If you like this kind of thing, then I would encourage you to subscribe. You've already heard me ask about the using the comments section to impart your knowledge, any more that you may know about the reel. And if that top of the spool actually comes off. And so use your comments. If you like it, please like the presentation on the screen. And finally, I would appreciate you subscribing, because that is what keeps my channel going. So one last thought here: if you have a reel that needs to be repaired and you're interested in having me do that for you, just contact me by the email on the business card that follows, and I'll be happy to provide you with that service information. So there we go again. We're going to call this one a success, the Karmann number 41. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.